First week into the lockdown, I'm walking into the door of my workshop. I have a textile studio in Amsterdam. The heating has been off, it's been a long time. So this big warehouse is dark, it's cold, it's empty. I'm sitting there alone, looking at all these orders that have been canceled. You know, we work for the cultural sector and companies that make events. So because of Corona, it's the end of it all. I'm sitting there alone, and I don't even think about looking at my bank account. I just simply assume it was over. All the work, all the effort of all the last 5 years has finally have come to an end. So I'm looking at all these sewing machines and a lot of leftover fabric. And then I think to myself, without orders, I'm going broke. But why not making the best of it? So I pick up my phone and I call Abu Ahmad. He's one of the best tailors makers tonight. And I tell him, hey man, I have no money, no orders. Corona is the end of it all. But can we do something with all this leftover fabric? So it took me a second, and then he answered to me with this very nice Syrian accent. Mondkapje. Him in a face mask. All that I can remember is on the next day, he's walking into the workshop with his son, his cousin, his friends, and we started making face masks to donate to the homeless people in Amsterdam. There will be a much better use to our dead stock fabric. And at that point, I realized that this is going to be the most honorable way to go down. Going bankrupt in March this year is not going to be my first time. But before I dive into my own story, let's make a pause for step number 1. Change is a phone call away. When looking at global challenges, the most of us tend to see this giant Goliath standing in front of us. It's like this big hairy monster that stops us from moving. But if we dare to face this giant, our actions can have a domino effect, creating a chain of change. The moment you realize that, making a simple phone call can be the moment you start to change the world. So let me tell a little bit about my own story. I was born in São Paulo, in Brazil, son of a Dutch mother and a Brazilian father. In Brazil, the extent of inequality is so big that you can see homeless children knocking on the windows of Ferraris, begging for money to survive. Being exposed to this reality made me get the drive to want change. So I went to work on social projects as a designer. I wanted to go to Africa to design water pumps and this sort of things. So as a creative, I would never want to have a job where I would have to wear a tie. But funny enough, when I was 18, I had to start working at a bank because my parents could not afford my studies. On the other hand, working at a bank, I was in contact with business people every day. So then I thought, could I be an entrepreneur? And that went really well shortly. I quit the bank, started to sell cars, quit the cars, started to sell clothes, and everything went really fast. I was just 22. And then classic mistake, I forgot about the social causes because I was busy making money. Well, they say, what comes fast, goes fast. And I made a series of wrong decisions, and before turning 23, I went broke. Being with empty pockets at first gave me an impression of having nothing. But this is when I started to learn step number 2. Be resourceful. Being resourceful actually means looking at what you have instead of what you're missing. Being left without money, I was confronted for the first time with the opportunity of making a possibility out of nothing. At the same time the finances went down, I was liberated to work back with my inner purpose, so I could be free again to work with social projects. So then I changed my mindset, and I decided to go after inspiring people and ask this single question. Hey, dude, could I work for you for free? Because I was feeling free to dare, I was lucky enough to meet great people that looked at me and said, I'm not sure what you can do, dude, but let me give you a shot. Being given the opportunity of making use of my talents was proving an essential step in my career and what I do today. My approach allowed me to work and live in the whole world. So I went from São Paulo to Toronto, from Paris to Shanghai, and then, guess what? To Nairobi in Kenya. And I did end up being a designer working in Africa. So having a resourceful mindset allowed me to get closer to my purpose, to make change, and I was really happy about it. But then 2015 came. And at the same time that I'm working for this fantastic social enterprise in Kenya, at my doorstep in Amsterdam, the refugee crisis is broken out. And thousands of newcomers are trying desperately to come to Europe in desperate search for safety and a home. There's thousands of men, of women, of children who lost everything because of war. And I come in here, ending up with nothing. I was looking at the scale of this emergency, and I wanted to do something about it. But then, looking at the numbers of the crisis, it was so shocking. Today, there are 80 million people forcibly displaced around the globe. Only in the Syrian conflict pushed 7 million people out of their homes. Looking at all these numbers, I know how you feel. That's how I felt. I didn't know where to start. But then, step number 3, start with your own 2 hands. So, how could I make the refugee crisis something that my 2 hands could reach? The thing is, together with thousands of newcomers that are coming to Europe, they are crossing the sea, and they are also coming with thousands of life vests. They are left behind in the shores after the crossing towards Europe. Thousands of life vests was too much, but what about a small box of life vests that my 2 hands could reach? So, together with a group of fantastic people in Amsterdam, we call it a Greek NGO, and asked them to bring us a box of life vests with literally 5 life vests inside. We gathered a group of newcomers and locals, and we asked them what was the meaning of this life vest, and the result was amazing. As contrary to what the media was depicting or talking about the life vest as this icon of tragedy, we saw there newcomers telling us that life vests are actually a symbol of hope. It is the only hope they have when crossing the sea towards Europe. So, while the world was talking about a tragedy, what we saw there was a beautiful opportunity to talk about a positive story. So then, with these life vests and 1 sewing machine, we made this ribbon, a symbol of hope, and created a campaign called Ribbons Life. We ended up making thousands of ribbons. And we supported local NGOs, and it was a big party. But something happened during that process was going to change my life forever. One of the tailors supporting to make these ribbons is named Hassan. It's a young boy who was born and raised in Aleppo, Syria. Hassan and I got very well along during the making of these ribbons. And he came to me and shared his dream, that actually was to be a computer engineer. He shared with me that he had borrowed a laptop from a friend, and he was learning this online course called Python. I said, Python? What the hell is that? Well, anyways, what I saw in his eyes was exactly the same thing that I saw in my story just a few years later. I saw talent in search for opportunity. So then, what is the step number 1 to change the world? Pick up the phone call. So I called a coding school, and I connected Hassan to them. And he learned so much that today He's a successful programmer working in Amsterdam. He even now is giving me stories about artificial intelligence. So then I thought, whoa, what about if I create a company where my business is to repeat the story of Hassan over and over again? This is when Makers Unite was born. We developed a talent development program for newcomers to recognize their talent, and then we connect them to the next professional step. And with those ribbons, we started to make more and more products together. The products are sold to sustain the programs. So the more products we sell, the more people who can benefit, and that became our job. We created a successful social enterprise that is now internationally recognized. Today, we have trained almost 200 newcomers in our development programs, and we keep counting. We're lucky to partner up with amazing companies that are really proud of ordering products with us, and they help to push our story further. And finally, we're just about to start our first programs in other countries in order to scale impact abroad. So, how does it feel to create a company to change the world? It is freaking difficult. The truth is that in the last 5 years, I had so many nights I could not sleep. And I am thinking I'm going back to the beginning of my own story, and then like, oh shit, I'm going broke again. I could not count how many people thought I was going crazy, and then let's say they're turning off my phone call. But we kept going. And maybe we are a little bit crazy, but it takes courage to be naive and optimistic. But seriously, it's the story of each one of our participants that inspires me every day, a story of hope. It connects me to the story of people from Brazil, where I come from. People that, despite all the odds of poverty, corruption, inequality, they keep a smile on their face. And they keep going, believing that one day things will change. So let me take you back to March 2020, when I started to make these ribbons with my Syrian friend to donate to the homeless people in Amsterdam. Well, I thought I was broke. But the result of my phone call was amazing. We not only got a group of tailors to work in production, but a movement of volunteers willing to support us. We ended up making thousands of face masks for the homeless people in Amsterdam. We even got this article in the newspaper, "Refugees helping Dutch people in need during the times of Corona." What a great headline. But making those ribbons connected us to so many commercial assignments that we ended up saving the company from going bankrupt. Once again, I was proof that change was a phone call away. The thing is, we're looking at global challenges like US elections, climate change, inequality, Black Lives Matter. It is all so complex and so big that the most of us tend to be just numb towards the challenge, and we don't do anything. But actually, we have so much more than what we realize. You have so much more than what you realize. Just ask yourself this: what can I do to start today? Step number 1, pick up the phone call, because no one's going to change the world alone. Step number 2, make the problem as simple as enclose to your 2 hands. And step number 3, be resourceful and think of what you have instead of what you're missing. If you realize that you can make change, you'll be amazed of what you can achieve. So I ask, who can I call today to start changing the world?